The cicadas hummed outside the windows of the Palm Beach mansion as Monica wiped the last drops of water from Richard's back. 10 years of the same routine, bathing, drying, powdering, had worn grooves into her movements. Her hands moved automatically while her mind drifted elsewhere, away from this gilded prison that most people would mistake for paradise. Have you ever ignored red flags in a relationship until it was almost too late? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. I need you to do something for me. Richard's voice cut through the humid air. Monica's hands paused on his shoulder. Something in his tone made her stomach tighten. In their decade together, she had learned to read the currents beneath his words. Of course, she said, keeping her voice neutral. What do you need? Richard turned his head, those cold blue eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that hadn't been there for years. The wheelchair-bound real estate mogul might have lost the use of his legs in that car accident, but his gaze still carried the weight of the power he once wielded across Florida. I need you to seduce James Carrington. The towel slipped from Monica's fingers and fell to the marble floor with a soft thud. You want me to what? The words came out as barely more than a whisper. James Carrington, my former business partner. Richard's voice remained steady, as if he'd asked her to fetch his medication. I need information that only he has. Information worth millions. Monica stepped back, her bare heel hitting the clawfoot tub. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious in my life. Richard wheeled himself toward her, closing the distance she'd tried to create. It's just business, Monica. Nothing more. Business. Her voice rose despite her efforts to control it. You're asking me to prostitute myself for your business? Richard's expression hardened. After everything I've given you, this is how you respond? I took you from nothing. A nurse from Birmingham with community college debt and Walmart clothes. His words sliced like paper cuts, small but stinging. Look at you now. Look around you. Monica did look at the chandelier casting diamonds of light across imported marble, at the Gulf view worth millions, at the wedding ring that had once seemed like a fairy tale ending for a girl from Alabama. If you love me, Richard whispered, his eyes cold as winter, you'll do this one thing. After all I've given you, is that really too much to ask? Her phone buzzed on the counter. A text message flashed on the screen. Final arrangements confirmed. Awaiting your signal. Richard's eyes flicked to the phone, then back to her face. A smile, thin and knowing, spread across his lips. You should get that. Might be important. The bathroom suddenly felt smaller, the walls closing in despite the cathedral ceiling. Monica reached for the phone with trembling fingers, but Richard's hand shot out, grabbing her wrist with surprising strength. We're not finished discussing my request. The word request hung in the air like the Florida humidity. Heavy, suffocating, impossible to escape. I need time, Monica managed to say. This isn't something I can just agree to. Time is the one luxury we don't have, Richard replied, his thumb pressing against the pulse point on her wrist. The touch wasn't painful, but it sent electricity up her arm, not the kind from attraction, but from fear. Carrington will be at the Palm Beach Foundation Gala tomorrow night. You'll be there too. And if I refuse? The question emerged before she could stop it. Richard released her wrist slowly, almost regretfully. Then I suppose we'll find out just how strong those wedding vows really are. For better or for worse. Wasn't it? This is the worst part, Monica. This is where you prove your love. She felt sick, the bathroom's luxury now seeming garish and obscene. This man, this husband she had bathed and cared for, whose body she knew better than her own, was asking her to cross a line that would erase her completely. Why? She asked, her voice barely audible over the hum of the bathroom fan. Why would you ask this of me? Richard's expression softened, but his eyes remained cold. Because you're beautiful. Because you're perfect. Because men trust you. His hand reached up to touch her face. Because you can make them believe anything. Monica flinched away, but the bathroom wall stopped her retreat. I'll give you until morning to decide, Richard said, wheeling toward the door. Just remember everything you have to lose. As he disappeared into the bedroom, Monica slid down against the wall, her legs finally giving out. The phone buzzed again. Same number, new message. Clock is ticking. He's getting impatient. Through the open door, she could see Richard by the bedroom window, phone to his ear, speaking in hushed tones. The cicadas outside grew louder, their rhythmic pulsing like a warning. This wasn't about business. This wasn't about loyalty. This was about ownership. And Monica suddenly realized that despite 10 years of marriage, she had no idea who the man in that wheelchair truly was. What price would you pay to keep a marriage that suddenly feels like a prison? The first time Monica saw Richard Prescott, he wasn't in a wheelchair. He stood tall in the hospital corridor, his custom Italian suit a stark contrast to the institutional beige walls of Atlanta Memorial. Monica had been checking his mother's vitals. Mrs. Eleanor Prescott, stroke victim, private room. Do not disturb unless necessary. When he strode in with the confidence of a man who had never heard the word no. You're not Dr. Ranford, he'd said, his eyes bluer in memory than they seemed now. Assessing her with frank appreciation. Nurse Williams, she'd replied, meeting his gaze without flinching. Dr. Ranford will be in shortly. He'd smiled then, a genuine smile that transformed his face from handsome to breathtaking. Nurse Williams, my mother hates hospitals, yet she's smiling in her sleep. That's her doing, I suspect. Monica shook the memory away as she opened Richard's medication cabinet in their Palm Beach bathroom. 10 years gone in a blink. From that first meeting to a whirlwind romance that scandalized both their worlds. Him, old Connecticut money. Her, the daughter of a hospital cook who worked double shifts to put her through nursing school. The cabinet's familiar array of orange prescription bottles greeted her. Blood thinners, pain management, muscle relaxants. She reached for his evening dose, then froze. Something glinted behind the bottles. Something that didn't belong. Monica pushed the medications aside. A small golden key lay on a glass shelf, partially hidden behind the blood pressure pills. The key's head was engraved with an unfamiliar emblem, a geometric pattern that nagged at her memory. She picked it up, the metal warm against her fingers. This didn't belong to any door in the house, at least not any door she knew about. Finding everything all right, Monica spun around. Richard sat in the bedroom doorway, watching her with hooded eyes. Just getting your evening meds, she said, palming the key and reaching for the correct bottles with her other hand. Did you need something else? Come sit with me. He patted the bed beside him, like you used to in the beginning, when she still believed in fairy tales. After preparing his pills in a small crystal dish, everything in this house was crystal or gold or marble. Monica sat beside him on the edge of the bed. The mattress sank beneath her weight, tilting her slightly toward him. Do you remember our first kiss? Richard asked, taking the pills one by one. Monica nodded. The hospital supply closet. His mother discharged. Monica's shift over, his hand on the small of her back, guiding her into the narrow space between shelves of gauze and antiseptic. You tasted like coffee and cinnamon gum, he said, swallowing the last pill. I knew right then. Knew what? The key burned against her palm, hidden in her closed fist. That you were mine. His hand found her knee, resting there with casual possession. I've given you a good life, haven't I, Monica? The question felt like a trap. Yes, she said carefully. You have. Better than Birmingham. Better than changing bedpans for minimum wage. Each word landed like a slap, but Monica kept her expression neutral. I was a registered nurse, Richard, with a BSN. I never changed bedpans for minimum wage. His eyes narrowed slightly. The point remains. I lifted you up. I gave you all this. His gesture encompassed the ocean view, the designer clothes in her closet, the diamond on her finger that felt heavier by the second. And now you need me to repay the debt, Monica said quietly. Richard's smile didn't reach his eyes. It's not a debt, darling. It's an opportunity. For us. Us. As if they had been equal partners all these years. I need to finish in the bathroom, Monica said, standing abruptly. I'll think about your request. Once alone, she slid the golden key into her pocket and opened the bottom drawer of the cabinet, the one where she kept Richard's backup medications and supplies. Something about the emblem on the key had triggered a memory. She pushed aside packages of sterile gauze and found what she was looking for, an old photo album she'd tucked away years ago. Their wedding album. But when she lifted it, the bottom of the drawer moved. False bottom. Heart pounding. Monica removed the thin wooden panel. Beneath it lay another album. One she'd never seen before. Black leather, unmarked. She opened it with trembling fingers. The first page showed a young woman. Black, beautiful, with a shy smile. Not Monica, but so similar they could have been sisters. The next page, another woman. Same body type, same complexion, similar features. Page after page, women who looked like her. Women in nurses' scrubs. Women who all shared her look, her build, her coloring. The keys slipped from her fingers when she reached the final page. A photo of herself, taken through a window. In her old Atlanta apartment, before she ever met Richard. She hadn't been found by chance. She had been hunted. When did you first realize someone's attention wasn't a coincidence, but a carefully executed plan? What is this? Monica's voice barely remained steady as she placed the black album on Richard's lap the next morning. Sunlight streamed through the bedroom windows, turning the ocean beyond into a glittering blue canvas. Beautiful and oblivious to the storm brewing inside. Richard didn't even glance at the album. I see you've been exploring. These women, they all look like me. Monica crossed her arms, trying to stop their trembling. And that last photo was taken before we met. Why do you have surveillance photos of me from before we met? Richard sighed, placing a bookmark in the novel he'd been reading. It's not what you think. Then explain it to me. Monica remained standing, refusing to sit beside him on the bed they'd shared for a decade. Make me understand why my husband has a collection of women who could be my twins. Sit down, Monica. When she didn't move, Richard's voice hardened. Please, seat. She perched on the edge of the chaise lounge across from him, keeping distance between them. Richard ran his hand over the album's leather cover. After my mother's stroke, I interviewed dozens of private nurses. None were right. Too rough, too detached, too money-hungry. He finally looked up at her. Then I saw you with my mother. The way you spoke to her, touched her, treated her with dignity even when she couldn't respond. So you what? Research me? Stalk me? I vetted you, Richard corrected, like I vetted all potential caregivers. The photographs were taken by a private investigator I hired. Standard procedure for someone in my position. And the other women in that album? Richard shrugged. Previous candidates. They didn't work out. The explanation sounded reasonable, yet something cold slithered down Monica's spine. You lied to me. You said we met by chance. Would you have given me a chance if I told you the truth? I've been looking for someone exactly like you. Monica stood up, needing to move. That doesn't explain why you want me to. She couldn't even say it. With James Carrington. Richard closed the album and set aside. Carrington stole from me. Monica, million. Money that should be ours. Then sue him. Call the police. Hire more investigators. It's not that simple. Richard wheeled his chair closer to her. The money's hidden in offshore accounts. Accounts I can't access without certain passwords and documents that only Carrington has. And you think I can, what? Seduce this information out of him? Richard's eyes lit up. Yes, exactly. He has a type. Monica, you're exactly his type. The realization hit her like a physical blow. Like I was your type. That's why you chose me. I chose you because you were compassionate and capable, Richard said, his voice softening. Your appearance was a fortunate alignment with our current needs. Our needs, as if this violation were a shared goal. And if I refuse? Monica asked, already knowing the answer wouldn't be simple. Richard wheeled to the window, gazing out at the ocean. Did you know this house isn't in your name? Neither is the car you drive. The credit cards you use are all connected to accounts I control. He turned back to face her. If our marriage ended, you'd leave with exactly what you brought into it. The threat hung in the air between them. Are you saying you'd divorce me if I don't agree to prostitute myself for you? I'm saying actions have consequences. Richard's voice remained calm, reasonable. I've given you a beautiful life for 10 years. I'm asking for one evening in return. One dinner with Carrington. One opportunity to recover what belongs to us. Monica's mind raced, cataloging options, escape routes, resources. Her nursing license had lapsed years ago when she became Richard's full-time caretaker. Her family couldn't help. Her mother had passed 3 years ago, leaving only distant cousins she barely kept in touch with. She needed time to think, to plan, to understand what was really happening. 3 days, she said finally. I need 3 days to prepare myself for what you're asking. Richard studied her face, searching for deception, finding none, because Monica had learned from the master how to hide her thoughts. He nodded slowly. The gala is in 4 days. That should be sufficient. His smile returned, warm and approving, as if they were discussing vacation plans rather than her sexual exploitation. I knew you'd understand once you thought it through. I need some air, Monica said, turning toward the door before he could see the revulsion in her eyes. Monica! His voice stopped her at the threshold. I do love you. In my way. She didn't turn around. I know. The first lie she'd ever told him. That night, Richard beckoned her to his bed, patting the space beside him. Lie with me, he said, his voice soft. Like before, Monica slid under the sheets, keeping space between them. Richard's fingers found her collarbone, tracing its curve with practiced precision. You won't regret this, he whispered as his touch lingered on her skin. When it's over, we'll be stronger, wealthier, free. Monica stared at the ceiling, not trusting herself to speak. His fingers continued their exploration, possessive and calculating. I need you, Monica, he murmured against her ear. I've always needed you. His breath was warm against her neck, but all she felt was cold. How many times have you stayed in a relationship where love felt like a transaction, convincing yourself it was normal? 3 hours after Richard took his sleeping medication, Monica slipped out of bed. The mansion creaked around her, settling into the night like an old ship on calm waters. Outside, palm trees swayed against the moonlit sky, their shadows dancing across marble floors through floor-to-ceiling windows. For 10 years, she had moved through these rooms with the confidence of belonging. Tonight, she felt like an intruder in her own home. The golden key weighed heavy in the pocket of her silk robe as she padded barefoot down the hallway. Richard's gentle snores followed her, then faded as she descended the grand staircase to the first floor. His office remained the one room in the house where she rarely entered. Not forbidden exactly, but understood to be his domain. Like a throwback to the 1950s when men had studies and women had kitchens, and neither crossed the invisible boundary. The office door opened silently on well-oiled hinges. Monica paused in the doorway, listening for any change in the rhythm of the house. Nothing, just the distant hum of the air conditioning and the faint tick of the grandfather clock in the foyer. She slipped inside, closing the door behind her. Richard's wheelchair sat empty beside the massive mahogany desk, a throne awaiting its king. Monica moved past it to the computer, its screen black and lifeless. She jiggled the mouse, expecting a password prompt, but the screen remained dark. Powered down completely. Frustrated, she turned to the filing cabinets lining one wall. Each drawer opened to reveal meticulous organization, property deeds, tax records, insurance policies, all exactly where they should be. Nothing incriminating, nothing explaining his sudden demand or the women in the hidden album. As she closed the last drawer, her gaze fell on the bookshelf behind Richard's desk. Unlike the rest of the house, which a decorator had furnished in contemporary coastal luxury, this bookshelf held older items, leather-bound classics, family photos in tarnished silver frames, a small model of a sailing yacht, and a wooden box inlaid with the same geometric pattern as the key in her pocket. Monica's heart quickened as she lifted the box from the shelf. Heavier than it looked, with a small keyhole in the front that matched the golden key exactly. The lock turned with a soft click. Inside, neatly organized in folders, lay documents Monica had never seen before. Offshore account statements from the Cayman Islands, Switzerland, Singapore. Transfer records showing millions moving between accounts. And a file labeled Carrington, containing what appeared to be surveillance photos of a silver-haired man in expensive suits, dining with beautiful women, boarding private jets. Beneath these folders lay something else, a thin leather portfolio embossed with Richard's initials. Monica opened it with trembling fingers. Marriage certificates. 4 of them, each bearing Richard's name alongside women Monica had never heard of. The dates spanned 15 years, each marriage lasting approximately 2 years, with the last one ending just months before Richard met Monica. For wives before her, all vanished from his life without a trace, all absent from any story he'd ever told her about his past. Her fingers fumbled with her phone as she quickly photographed each document, her breathing shallow and quick in the silence of the office. As she replaced the portfolio, her elbow knocked against a remote control on the desk. A soft whirring sound came from behind her. Monica turned to see a section of wall sliding open, revealing a hidden room beyond. She froze, torn between fear and desperate curiosity. The hidden room beckoned, dark and forbidden, but the risk of discovery grew with each minute. Another time, she couldn't risk Richard waking to find her gone. She quickly returned the box to its place on the bookshelf and slipped out of the office, locking the door behind her. The golden key went back into the bathroom cabinet, hidden once more behind prescription bottles. As Monica climbed back into bed beside Richard, his breathing changed rhythm slightly. His hand reached out, finding her waist in the darkness. "Where were you?" he murmured, his voice thick with sleep and medication. "Just getting water," she whispered, forcing herself to relax against him. His fingers tightened possessively on her hip. "You're cold." "The air conditioning," she lied, hating how easily the deception came now. Richard pulled her closer, his body curving around hers like a question mark. His lips brushed against the back of her neck, sending an involuntary shiver down her spine. "I've been thinking," he said, suddenly sounding more awake, "about what you'll wear to the gala. Something red, I think. Carrington likes red." Monica closed her eyes, fighting the urge to pull away. "Whatever you think is best. I've already ordered something. It arrived today." She hadn't seen any packages. "Where is it?" "In my closet. I'll show you tomorrow." His hand slid from her waist to her stomach, fingers playing possessively across her abdomen. "Custom made, just for this occasion." The implication turned her blood to ice. How long had he been planning this? How many other aspects of her life had been choreographed without her knowledge? "Try to sleep," Richard murmured, his breath warm against her ear. "You'll need your strength for the coming days." As his breathing deepened back into sleep, Monica remained awake, staring at the shadow patterns on the ceiling. The man pressed against her, this stranger she had married, had orchestrated her entire life with the precision of a chess master, and she had never even seen the board until now. In Richard's nightstand drawer, a phone vibrated silently. The screen illuminated briefly, displaying a text message. Is she cooperating? The deadline hasn't changed. Either she does it, or we implement contingency plan. Would you keep searching for keys to locked doors, or walk away before finding what's behind the final one? The morning sun transformed Richard's physical therapy room into a cathedral of light. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Atlantic, where distant boats dotted the horizon like white thumbprints on blue canvas. Any other day, Monica would have paused to appreciate the view. Today, she barely noticed it. "You seem distracted," said Elaine, Richard's physical therapist, a sturdy woman in her 50s with forearms like a tennis pro and no patience for excuses. "Everything okay?" Monica forced a smile. "Just tired. Didn't sleep well." Elaine nodded toward Richard, who was performing guided leg lifts on the exercise mat. "He's making good progress today. Range of motion is improving." Monica watched as Richard grimaced through another repetition. The strain on his face looked genuine. The determined concentration of a man fighting to regain what was lost. If she hadn't seen the documents last night, hadn't found the hidden album and marriage certificates, she might have felt proud of his effort. "I need to check something in the supply cabinet," Monica said, stepping away. "Be right back." In the relative privacy of a storage closet, Monica pulled out her phone and called a number she hadn't dialed in years. "Atlanta Memorial Neurology Department." "Hi." I'm trying to reach Dr. Kaplan. Dr. Kaplan retired last year. Would you like to speak with Dr. Morse? Monica closed her eyes. Another dead end. No, thank you. I'll try another. Monica? Monica Williams, is that you? The voice belonged to Darlene Jenkins, head nurse when Monica had worked there. A lifetime ago. Darlene? Yes, it's me. Girl, where have you been? 10 years without a peep. Hold on. Let me step away from the desk. Monica waited, heart pounding, aware of every second ticking by. Through the closet door, she could hear Elaine counting repetitions, Richard's occasional grunt of effort. Okay, I'm back, Darlene said. What's going on? You sound stressed. I need information about a patient from years ago. Eleanor Prescott, stroke victim. I took care of her before I left. A pause. Richard Prescott's mother? The real estate guy? Yes, him. Honey, why are you asking about ancient history? Everybody knows you married the son and moved to Florida to live like royalty. Monica ignored the edge in Darlene's voice. I need to know if Dr. Kaplan left any notes about Richard. About his accident. What accident? Monica's blood went cold. The car accident that paralyzed him. It happened before his mother's stroke. Silence stretched across the line. Then, Monica, Richard Prescott was never a patient here. Not while I've been working, and I've been here 20 years. And his mother's charts never mentioned him having any disability. The room seemed to tilt beneath Monica's feet. That's not possible. He's been in a wheelchair for as long as I've known him. All I know is what's in the records. And there's nothing about Richard Prescott being paralyzed or injured. Darlene's voice softened. Monica, are you in some kind of trouble? Before Monica could answer, the closet door opened. Elaine stood there, expression unreadable. Richard's asking for you, she said. Says he needs his medication. I have to go, Monica told Darlene. Thank you. Monica, wait. She ended the call, slipping the phone into her pocket. Coming right now. Richard sat in his wheelchair, toweling sweat from his face. His eyes followed Monica as she crossed the room to the medication cart. Who were you talking to? He asked, voice casual. Just checking on a prescription refill. Monica lied, measuring his post-therapy pain medication into a cup. The pharmacy needed verification. Richard took the pills, swallowing them with water. You know what I was thinking during therapy? About our honeymoon. Remember that massage on the beach in Fiji? Monica nodded, the memory washing over her. Sunset, private beach. Richard insisting the resort's massage therapist teach him how to properly massage her back. His hands had been surprisingly skilled, finding knots of tension she hadn't known existed. I was thinking you might need to relax before the gala, Richard continued. I could help with that. Like old times. The offer hung between them. An intimacy that once would have been welcome, but now felt like another manipulation. That would be nice, she said, the words ashen in her mouth. Good. Tonight, then. Elaine cleared her throat. We should finish the session. 3 more exercises to go. As Richard returned to the mat, Monica caught Elaine watching her with an odd expression. Is everything all right? Monica asked quietly. Elaine glanced at Richard, then back to Monica. We should talk. Not here. Not now. Before Monica could press further, the door to the therapy room opened. Harold, the estate's groundskeeper for the past 15 years, appeared with fresh towels. Mrs. Prescott, he said with a nod, his weathered face revealing nothing. Then, almost imperceptibly, he slipped something into the towel he handed her, a folded piece of paper. Monica tucked it into her pocket without looking at it, heart racing. Later, alone in the guest bathroom, where she knew no cameras would be watching, because yes, she had discovered 3 hidden cameras in their bedroom and main bathroom during her explorations last night. Monica unfolded the note. In neat, precise handwriting were the words, Ms. Monica, there are things about Mr. Richard's accident you don't know. Things I've seen when he thinks no one is watching. Meet me by the boathouse at midnight. Come alone. Monica flushed the note down the toilet, watching the paper dissolve into nothing. The walls of her gilded cage were beginning to reveal their true design, and it was far more complex and dangerous than she had ever imagined. How long would you continue questioning your own perception before trusting that pit feeling in your stomach? The boathouse loomed at the edge of the property, a weathered structure silhouetted against the midnight sky. Moonlight danced across the water as Monica made her way down the garden path, every sense alert for movement. She told Richard she needed a sleeping pill and would be out cold until morning, a lie that bought her these precious hours of freedom. Harold stood in the shadows, his weathered face grave in the dim light. At 70, he'd been with the Prescott estate longer than anyone. A quiet presence, trimming hedges and tending flowers while the world of wealth swirled around him. "Mrs. Prescott," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you for coming. You said you know something about Richard's accident." Harold glanced toward the main house, as if Richard might appear at any moment. There was no accident. The words hung in the humid air between them. "What do you mean? I've worked here 15 years. Mr. Richard hired me right after he bought this place." Harold's fingers twisted nervously around his worn cap. The first 8 years, he walked just fine. Then one day, the wheelchair appeared. He told the staff he had an accident in New York. But there was no accident. Monica's throat tightened. "How can you be sure?" "Because the night before he supposedly got injured, I saw him dancing on the back terrace with a woman." Harold's eyes locked with Monica's. The next morning, she was gone, and he was in that chair. "What woman?" "Young lady who looked a lot like you." "His wife at the time." Monica's knees weakened. "His wife." Harold nodded. "Fourth wife, I believe. Don't recall her name." He never introduced her properly to staff, just like the others before her. Others. The marriage certificates she'd found. The women in the album. What happened to her? Don't know for certain. One night she was here. Next morning Mr. Richard was calling for help, saying he couldn't move his legs. Harold's voice dropped even lower. But sometimes, when he thinks no one's around, he stands up, walks a bit, like he's stretching muscles that ain't really damaged. Monica leaned against the boathouse wall, processing this confirmation of her growing suspicions. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because yesterday, I overheard him on the phone talking about replacing you after some gala." Harold's weathered face creased with worry. "Same words I heard before the last." Mrs. Prescott disappeared. A chill ran through Monica despite the warm night air. "He's planning something at the gala." "Yes, ma'am. It involves that man he wants you to meet, Carrington." "Have you told anyone else about this?" "The police." Harold shook his head. "No proof. Just the word of an old gardener against a wealthy man." He pulled something from his pocket, a small flash drive. "But I did manage to copy some files from his computer when he left it open last month. Took me a while to get the courage to look at them." Monica took the drive, fingers closing around it like a lifeline. "What's on it?" "Account numbers, photos, and..." Harold hesitated. "Videos of the previous Mrs. Prescotts, in their final days here." Before Monica could respond, a beam of light swept across the lawn, security making rounds. "Go," Harold whispered, "and be careful. Don't let him know you suspect." Monica slipped the flash drive into her robe pocket and hurried back toward the house, mind racing. If Richard had been faking his paralysis for years, what else was he lying about? And what happened to the women who came before her? She made it back to the bedroom just as Richard was stirring, his form shifting beneath the sheets. "Monica!" His voice, thick with sleep or pretending to be. "Just using the bathroom," she said, slipping into bed beside him. "Go back to sleep." His hand found her waist, pulling her closer. She forced herself not to stiffen at his touch. "You're cold," he murmured. The air conditioning, she lied for the second time that night. His fingers trailed up her arm, along her collarbone, coming to rest at the base of her throat. Not squeezing, but resting there, a reminder of his strength, of her vulnerability. "Tomorrow we'll go over the plan for the gala," he said, suddenly sounding much more awake. "Carrington likes his women intelligent, but submissive. You'll need to play the part perfectly." Monica swallowed against the pressure of his hand. "Understand. Good girl." His fingers stroked her neck, a caress that felt like ownership. "You know I only want what's best for us." Us. The word had never sounded more hollow. The next morning, while Richard was occupied with his investment calls, Monica locked herself in the guest bathroom with her laptop and a flash drive. Her hands trembled as she plugged it in. Folders appeared on the screen, dates going back 15 years. She clicked on the most recent. Videos, dozens of them, security footage from various rooms in the house. The first showed Richard standing, walking normally, entering what appeared to be the hidden room she'd glimpsed in his office. The timestamp was from just 2 weeks ago. The next showed a woman who looked remarkably like Monica, crying at the dining room table while Richard stood over her, shouting. The timestamp, 8 years ago. The fourth wife Harold had mentioned. Document files contain financial records, massive transfers to offshore accounts, property deeds in names Monica didn't recognize, and what appear to be bribes to local officials. But it was the folder labeled contingency plans that turned her blood to ice. Inside were detailed scenarios for 4 different women, Richard's previous wives. Each plan outlined how they would exit the marriage, with options ranging from voluntary disappearance to staged accident. The last file was labeled with Monica's name. Her plan included a boating accident during the approaching hurricane season, insurance policies, press statements, even a draft of a heartbroken widower's eulogy. Richard had been planning her death, just as he planned the others. A knock at the bathroom door made her jump. "Monica!" Richard's voice came through the door. "Elaine is here for my therapy. I need you. Just a minute," she called, quickly ejecting the drive and closing the laptop. She stared at her reflection in the mirror, at the woman Richard had selected, groomed, and married. The woman he now planned to eliminate. Not if she eliminated him first. When she opened the door, Richard sat waiting in his wheelchair, his smile benevolent and patient. The smile of a predator who believed his prey was already trapped. "There you are," he said, reaching for her hand. "Elaine has some interesting news about my progress. The feeling in my legs is improving. Isn't that wonderful?" Monica forced a smile, squeezing his hand with just the right pressure. Not too tight, not too loose. Just as she'd been trained. "That's amazing, Richard. I always knew you'd walk again someday." His eyes met hers, searching for any sign of knowledge, any hint of awareness. She kept her expression neutral, her eyes adoring. Years of practice had made her the perfect wife. Now those same skills would help her survive. What would you do first? Gather more evidence, plan your escape, or confront the monster wearing your husband's face? 2 days before the gala, Monica sat in her car in the parking lot of a Palm Beach coffee shop, 3 miles from the estate. She told Richard she needed to pick up his special order supplements, a task mundane enough not to raise suspicion. In reality, she was waiting for someone who might hold the key to her survival. The woman who slid into the passenger seat looked nothing like her photographs. Alicia Kennedy had been Richard's 3rd wife, once beautiful in a polished, country club way. Now her face was tense, her once blonde hair dyed a nondescript brown, her eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. "You shouldn't have contacted me," were her first words. "If he finds out, you're dead." "He's already planning to kill me," Monica replied. "I found contingency plans." Alicia's hands trembled as she clutched her purse. "Then why are you still there? Run. Now, while you still can. I need proof first. Something that will keep him from coming after me." Alicia laughed, a harsh, broken sound. "You think proof matters? The man owns half the judges in Florida. I tried that route." "Tell me what happened to you," Monica said, watching the coffee shop in trance for anyone suspicious. "How did you get away?" Alicia's gaze drifted to the middle distance. "I was wife number 3. There were 2 before me, Elizabeth and Janine. I never met them, but Richard kept their photos. Said they died in accidents. And you believed him? He was very convincing. Showed me news articles, obituaries. Even took me to Elizabeth's grave once." Alicia's fingers twisted the strap of her purse. "It wasn't until I found the plans for my own accident that I realized the truth." Monica's throat tightened. "How did you escape?" "I didn't, not really. I faked my own death before he could arrange it. Car off a bridge into the Everglades. Left my purse and ID in the car." Alicia's eyes met Monica's. "I've been living under a false identity for 6 years. No credit cards, no social media, cash jobs only. And I still look over my shoulder every day. There must be something we can use against him. Some evidence the police would have to investigate." Alicia shook her head. Unless you can connect him directly to murder, they won't touch him. And even then, she trailed off, then reached into her purse and pulled out a small notebook. But maybe this will help. The notebook contained dates, account numbers, names, all in meticulous handwriting. What is this? Everything I collected during my marriage. His contacts, his secret accounts, his business partners, including James Carrington. Monica looked up sharply. You know Carrington? Richard tried to use me to get to him too. Carrington was his business partner until Richard screwed him in a deal. Stud Millionaire. Now Carrington has something Richard wants, evidence of his criminal activities. So this request for me to seduce Carrington is a trap. Alicia finished. For both of you, Richard's not trying to get information from Carrington. He's setting you up to take the fall for something. Monica flipped through the notebook, each page revealing more of Richard's elaborate web of deception. Did you know he can walk? That the paralysis is fake? Alicia nodded. It's his favorite trick. Makes women underestimate him. Makes them feel needed. By the time you realize the truth, you're already trapped. A notification pinged on Monica's phone. A text from Richard asking when she'd be home. She had 20 minutes before her absence would become suspicious. Get out of Palm Beach, Alicia said, opening the car door. Whatever you're planning, it's not worth the risk. I can't just leave. He'll find me, like he's still looking for you. Then make sure he can't come after you. Alicia's eyes hardened. Get what you need from that hidden room in his office. That's where he keeps the evidence that would destroy him. Monica's breath caught. You know about the room? I found it 2 weeks before I left. It's why I ran. What's in there? Alicia shuddered. Just be careful. And if you make it out alive, don't ever contact me again. After Alicia disappeared around the corner, Monica sat motionless, processing everything she'd learned. Richard's pattern was clear now. Find a caregiver, someone compassionate and dedicated. Isolate her, control her, then dispose of her when she was no longer useful. And now it was Monica's turn. When she returned to the estate, Richard was waiting in the foyer, his wheelchair positioned at the bottom of the grand staircase. You were gone a long time, he said, his tone casual but his eyes sharp. There was a line at the pharmacy. Monica held up the bag of supplements. And traffic was heavy. Richard wheeled closer, taking the bag from her hands. Their fingers brushed, and it took everything in her not to recoil from his touch. I laid out your dress for the gala, he said. It's on the bed. I'd like you to try it on for me. Monica forced a smile. Of course. The dress was blood red, exactly as Richard had promised. Silk that flowed like water, cut low in the back and lower in the front. A dress designed to attract attention, specifically James Carrington's attention. As she slipped it on, Monica felt Richard's eyes on her from the doorway, no longer bothering to hide his scrutiny. Perfect, he said as she turned to face him. Carrington won't be able to resist. And once I have his attention, what exactly am I supposed to do? Monica asked, meeting his gaze directly. Richard smiled, that cold, calculating smile that no longer held any pretense of affection. Get him alone. Get him talking about his offshore accounts. Record everything. And if he wants more than conversation, Richard's expression didn't change. Then you give him what he wants. Within reason. The casual way he offered her body made something snap inside Monica. And what if I told you I met with Alicia Kennedy today? For just a moment, genuine surprise flickered across Richard's face. Then his features smoothed back into controlled pleasantness. Alicia died in a car accident 6 years ago, darling. Perhaps you're confused. I'm not confused, Richard. I know everything. About Elizabeth, about Janine, about how you've been planning to replace me too. Richard's smile remained fixed, but his eyes turned to ice. I think you need to rest before the gala. You're clearly overworked. He wheeled toward her, reaching for her hand. Monica stepped back out of his reach. Don't touch me, she said quietly. Richard's expression hardened. Be very careful about your next move, Monica. Very careful indeed. That night, Richard insisted she take a sleeping pill to help with your nerves. Monica pretended to swallow it, hiding the tablet under her tongue until she could dispose of it. As she lay beside him in the darkness, Richard's hand found her waist, pulling her closer than he had in years. I need you, Monica, he whispered against her ear. "I've always needed you." His fingers trailed across her hip, up her side, claiming her body as his property while his words spun empty promises. Monica remained still, enduring his touch while her mind raced with plans. In just 2 days, she would be at the gala with Carrington. 2 days to figure out how to turn Richard's trap into her escape. Richard's lips brushed her neck, his breath warm against her skin. "We're going to fix everything," he murmured. "After the gala, we'll be free. Together." Another lie from a man who'd made deception his life's work. But this time, Monica was ready. This time, she wouldn't be the one to disappear. If you discovered you were just the latest in a pattern of victims, would you save yourself or stay to stop the cycle? The night before the gala, Monica waited until Richard's breathing deepened into sleep before slipping out of bed. The golden key felt warm in her palm as she made her way silently to his office. Tonight, she would find what Alicia had mentioned, the evidence in the hidden room that could destroy Richard. The office door yielded silently to her touch. Moonlight filtered through the windows, casting long shadows across Richard's empty wheelchair. Using her phone's flashlight, carefully shielded by her hand, Monica approached the bookshelf where she discovered the remote that opened the hidden door. She pressed the button. Nothing happened. She tried again, then checked the remote's battery compartment. Empty. Richard had removed the batteries, a precaution that told her he suspected something. Frustrated, Monica turned her attention to his desk. The drawers were locked, but the golden key that had opened the wooden box might work here too. She tried on the center drawer. The lock clicked open. Inside lay a laptop, one she'd never seen before. Not Richard's sleek MacBook that he used for everyday work, but an older model with a scuffed case. Monica lifted it out and opened the lid. The screen glowed to life, requesting a password. Monica tried Richard's usual passwords. Nothing worked. She was about to give up when she noticed a small notebook tucked beneath where the laptop had been. Inside were passwords, each labeled with a different account or device. Under backup laptop was a string of numbers and letters that made her blood run cold. Monica_replacement_2023. Her fingers trembled as she typed the password. The screen unlocked, revealing a desktop with neatly organized folders. One was labeled Monaco Project. Monica clicked it open. Documents appeared, transfer authorizations, property deeds, and what appeared to be falsified medical records, all bearing Monica's forged signature. According to these documents, she had authorized the transfer of all Richard's assets to accounts in Monaco. She had signed away her rights to any marital property. She had even, apparently, written a suicide note expressing guilt over stealing from her husband. Richard wasn't just planning her death. He was setting her up to take the fall for his financial crimes before she conveniently killed herself. As Monica scrolled through the documents, a new email notification appeared in the corner of the screen. The subject line, "Contingency Plan Activated." Heart racing, she opened it. All preparations complete for tomorrow night. Target confirmed attendance. Surveillance in place. Exit strategy secured. Awaiting final confirmation. The sender was simply JC, James Carrington, not Richard's enemy, but his accomplice. Monica quickly copied all the files to a cloud account she'd created using a burner email, then returned the laptop exactly as she'd found it. She was about to close the drawer when she noticed something else. A small black device that looked like a garage door opener. She recognized it immediately. The remote that controlled the hidden room door with batteries intact. Without hesitation, Monica pressed the button. The wall panel slid open silently, revealing the room beyond. The hidden space was smaller than she'd expected, more like a large closet than a room. But what it contained made her freeze in shock. The walls were covered with photographs, hundreds of them. Monica at the grocery store, Monica at the beach, Monica sleeping, all taken without her knowledge. But these weren't the most disturbing images. Interspersed among the photos of Monica were pictures of other women, Richard's previous wives. And at the end of each woman's section was a final photograph. Elizabeth in a car at the bottom of a ravine. Janine floating face down in the ocean. An empty car belonging to Alicia submerged in swamp water. Trophies. He kept trophies of his successful eliminations. In the center of the room stood a small table bearing items belonging to each woman. Elizabeth's wedding ring, Janine's pearl necklace, Alicia's driver's license. And, at the end of the display, an empty space, waiting for Monica's contribution to the collection. The sound of wheels on hardwood made her blood freeze. Finding everything you need? Richard's voice came from the office doorway. Not sleepy, not surprised, expectant. Monica stepped out of the hidden room, maintaining composure despite the hammering of her heart. Richard sat in his wheelchair, wearing a silk robe, his hair perfectly combed despite the late hour, as if he'd been waiting for this moment. "How long have you known I was investigating you?" she asked, surprised by the steadiness of her voice. Richard smiled, that cold, reptilian smile that never reaches eyes. "Since you found the key, I left it for you, Monica. A test. One you failed spectacularly. Why? Why this elaborate game? Why not just kill me like the others?" "Because you're special." Richard wheeled closer, stopping just out of arm's reach. "You've lasted longer than any of them. You've been the perfect wife. Until recently. What did they do to deserve death? What did I do? They served their purpose, then became liabilities." Richard's tone was conversational, as if discussing the weather. "Just as you've become. But I'm offering you something I didn't offer them. A choice." Monica's mind raced, calculating distances to the door, to weapons, to anything that might help her escape. "What choice?" "Complete the assignment tomorrow night. Help me secure Carrington's cooperation and the evidence he holds. Do that, and I'll let you leave. Alive, with enough money to disappear." The offer hung between them. Too clean, too simple to be genuine. "Why would you let me go when you killed the others?" Richard's smile widened. "Because you're smarter than they were. You'd be more trouble dead than alive at this point." Monica didn't believe him for a second. "And my alternative? There isn't one." Richard's voice hardened. "You help me tomorrow, or the contingency plan activates. Your choice." He reached into his robe pocket and withdrew a folded document. "I've even drawn up new terms. No seduction necessary. Just get Carrington alone, record his confession, then walk away. Simple." Monica took the document, scanning the contents. A contract promising her $5 million upon successful completion of the assignment, with language releasing her from the marriage. Too good to be true. A final trap. "I need time to think," she said, refolding the papers. "You have until morning." Richard turned his wheelchair toward the door. "But Monica, if you run, I'll find you. Just like I found Alicia last week." Monica's heart stopped. "What? Did you really think that was Alicia you met with?" "My dear, Alicia died exactly as the news reported. The woman you met was an actress, one I hired to feed you exactly what I wanted you to hear." The floor seemed to tilt beneath Monica's feet. "The notebook she gave me. Information I wanted you to have. Breadcrumbs leading exactly where I needed you to go." Richard reached the doorway and paused. "You see, Monica, you've never been in control. Not for a single moment of our marriage." As he disappeared down the hallway, Monica stood frozen in the moonlit office, the contract clutched in her hand, the photographs of dead women staring down at her from the hidden room. She had less than 24 hours to outmaneuver a man who had anticipated her every move for 10 years. When every escape route turns out to be another part of the trap, do you keep fighting or surrender to negotiate better terms? The morning of the gala dawned with an ominous sky, dark clouds gathering on the horizon, the air heavy with the promise of a storm. Weather reports warned of a hurricane forming in the Atlantic, still days away, but tracking toward the Florida coast. Monica stood at the bedroom window, watching palm trees bend in the strengthening wind. The meteorological chaos matched her internal state. Violent, unpredictable, building toward destruction. "The meteorologist says the hurricane should hit in 3 days," Richard said from behind her. "Perfect timing, really. Right after our business with Carrington concludes." Monica turned to face him. In the harsh morning light, she could see the calculation in his eyes, the complete absence of the man she thought she'd married. "I've been thinking about your offer," she said. Richard raised an eyebrow. "And I'll do it, but I want the money transferred before we go to the gala, not after." A smile spread across his face, the indulgent smile of an adult humoring a child. "That's not how this works, Monica. You get paid when the job is done. Then how do I know you'll honor our agreement?" Richard wheeled himself to his closet, sliding open the door to reveal his tuxedo hanging pressed and ready. Beside it hung Monica's red dress, a slash of crimson against the neutral tones of his wardrobe. "Because I'm a businessman, and this is a business transaction." He turned back to her. "The most important one of my career, as it happens. Carrington has evidence that could send me to prison for the rest of my life. Once you help me neutralize that threat, you'll get exactly what I promised." Monica knew better than to believe him, but she nodded anyway. "What exactly am I recording? What confession?" "Carrington has been laundering money through his real estate developments for years, just as I have. The difference is, he kept records implicating us both." Richard's tone was matter-of-fact, as if discussing a minor business dispute rather than major felonies. "I need him to admit, on record, that the documents are falsified, that he created them to frame me. And why would he confess that to me?" Richard's smile turned cold. "Because you're going to tell him you found evidence in my office, evidence that proves he's been skimming millions from our joint ventures. You'll offer to destroy it in exchange for his confession that he framed me. He'll never believe that. He will if you show him this." Richard handed her a USB drive, actual evidence of his embezzlement. The man's greed outweighs his intelligence. Monica took the drive, another piece in Richard's elaborate chess game. "And once I have his confession, you signal me. I enter. We make the exchange, his confession for the evidence of his crimes. Simple." Nothing about this was simple, but Monica nodded again. "I'll need a weapon. For protection." Richard laughed, a genuine sound that chilled her more than his anger would have. "Always the practical nurse." "Fine. There's a handgun in my desk drawer. You can take it, unloaded of course, just for show." The casual way he granted her request confirmed what she already suspected. Richard had countermeasures in place for every contingency, including her potential rebellion. "Now," he said, his demeanor shifting to that of a solicitous husband, "let's have breakfast. You'll need your strength for tonight." The kitchen staff had prepared an elaborate spread. Fresh fruit, eggs Benedict, French toast. Monica's stomach rebelled at the sight, but she forced herself to eat small bites, watching Richard devour his meal with apparent relish. "Delicious, isn't it?" he asked, cutting into his perfectly poached egg. Monica nodded, taking a sip of orange juice to wash down the tasteless food. "Very. I've always appreciated your adaptability, Monica. It's one of your finest qualities." Richard dabbed his lips with a napkin. "Elizabeth fought me at every turn. Janine became hysterical when she discovered the truth. But you've maintained your composure admirably." "I was trained as a nurse," Monica replied, setting down her fork. "Crisis management is part of the job." "Indeed, and you've managed this crisis better than most." He pushed his empty plate away. "Which is why I almost regret what comes next." A wave of dizziness washed over Monica. The room seemed to blur at the edges, the colors too bright, sounds suddenly muffled. "What did you do?" she asked, her tongue feeling thick in her mouth. "Insurance policy," Richard said, his voice coming as if from a great distance. "Just a mild sedative in your juice. Nothing that will impair your performance tonight. It will wear off in a few hours, but enough to keep you compliant while we prepare." Monica tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't cooperate. She gripped the edge of the table as the room tilted around her. "You should lie down until it passes," Richard suggested, suddenly beside her, helping her to her feet. His strength, the strength of a man who had never truly been paralyzed, easily supported her weight as he guided her toward the stairs. "Why?" she managed to ask as they climbed, her feet dragging on each step. "Because you visited the hidden room last night, Monica. Because you copied files from my laptop to an account you thought I wouldn't discover." His voice remained pleasant, conversational. "Because you're still planning something, and I can't allow that." He helped her to the bed, positioning her carefully against the pillows. Through her drug haze, Monica noticed that the windows were now covered with hurricane shutters, though the storm was still days away. "Rest now," Richard said, smoothing her hair back from her forehead in a parody of affection. "When you wake up, we'll get ready for the gala together. And after tonight, all of this unpleasantness will be behind us." As darkness closed in around her, Monica heard the unmistakable sound of a key turning in a lock. Not the bedroom door, but the bathroom door, the closet, every potential exit. Her last conscious thought was the realization that the hurricane shutters weren't to keep the storm out. They were to keep her in. When you discover the person you trusted most has been drugging you, what terrifies you more? What they've already done, or what they're planning to do next? Monica awoke to darkness and the distant rumble of thunder. For a moment, disorientation clouded her mind. Then memory rushed back with sickening clarity. Richard, the drug juice. His casual confession about the women who came before her. The bedside clock read 5:47 p.m. The gala began at 8. She sat up carefully, fighting a wave of lingering dizziness. The sedative had mostly worn off, but left her mouth dry and her thoughts slightly fuzzy around the edges. Testing her legs, Monica stood cautiously. The room swayed for a moment, then stabilized. She tried the bedroom door, locked as expected. The bathroom door too. The closet. Every potential exit secured. But Richard had made one critical mistake. In his confidence, he'd left her with her phone, sitting on the nightstand where she'd placed it that morning. Monica grabbed it, fingers trembling as she navigated to her contacts. Who would she call? The police? They'd never believe her without evidence. And even with it, Richard's influence might protect him. Friends? She had none left after years of Richard's systematic isolation. As she scrolled through the sparse list of contacts, thunder cracked again. Closer now, the storm arriving faster than predicted. The lights flickered once, twice, then steadied. A soft click came from the bedroom door. The lock turning. Monica quickly slipped the phone into her pocket and sat on the edge of the bed, composing her features into a mask of drowsy confusion. Richard entered, pushing his wheelchair rather than sitting in it, a detail that might have shocked her yesterday, but now seemed merely confirmation of what she already knew. "You're awake. Good." He closed the door behind him but didn't lock it, another sign of his absolute confidence. The storm's accelerated. Hurricane warnings been issued, but the gala is still proceeding. These events are too important to cancel for mere weather. Monica watched him cross to the closet, noting how smoothly he moved, how strong his legs appeared. 10 years of pretending, of allowing her to bathe him, dress him, care for him, all a performance designed to make her feel needed while he planned her eventual disposal. "How long have you been able to walk?" she asked, her voice steadier than she expected. Richard paused, then turned to face her with a slight smile. "I never lost the ability. The wheelchair is simply good business. People underestimate you when they think you're disabled. They reveal things they otherwise wouldn't. It's been an effective tool, and I was just another tool. At first." Richard opened the closet, removing the red gown and laying it carefully across the bed. "But you became more than that. You were exceptional, Monica. The best of them all. Until I wasn't. Until you started asking questions. Started looking where you shouldn't." He moved to the dresser, retrieving jewelry from a locked drawer, diamond earrings, a matching necklace. "I had plans for us, you know. 2 more years together, then an amicable divorce. You would have walked away wealthy. Safe, like Elizabeth, and Janine, and Alicia." Monica's voice hardened. "I saw the photographs, Richard. Your trophies." Richard sighed, setting the jewelry box on the bedside table. "Unfortunate necessities. They discovered things they shouldn't have. Made demands. Threatened exposure." He shrugged. "Business casualties. Is that what I'm now? A business casualty? That depends entirely on you." Richard sat beside her on the bed, close enough that she could smell his cologne. "Tonight can still go as planned. You help me with Carrington, I help you disappear with enough money to start fresh. Or you let the alternative hang unspoken between them." Monica forced herself to meet his gaze. "And I'm supposed to trust you? After everything I've discovered, trust has nothing to do with it. Self-interest governs us both now." Richard's hand found hers, his fingers wrapping around her wrist in a grip that was just tight enough to remind her of his strength. I gain nothing from your death if you help me tonight. In fact, your continued existence, far from here under a new identity, provides useful insurance. The calculation in his eyes told Monica everything she needed to know. The moment she was no longer useful, no agreement would protect her. I need to shower, she said, pulling her hand from his grasp, to prepare for tonight. Richard nodded, standing. Of course. I've unlocked the bathroom. Your cosmetics are laid out. He walked to the door, then paused. 1 hour, Monica. Then we leave for the gala. After he left, Monica moved quickly. The bathroom was indeed unlocked, but she had no illusions about privacy. If Richard had hidden cameras throughout the house, the bathroom would certainly be monitored. She turned on the shower, letting steam fill the room while she inspected every inch of the space. There, above the mirror, a tiny camera lens caught the light, and another disguised in a decorative wall sconce. Keeping her back to both cameras, Monica pulled out her phone and opened her banking app. Her personal account, the only one Richard didn't control, contained just $4,327.82, her fun money allowance that she'd been quietly saving. Not enough to disappear, but enough for what she needed now. She transferred the entire amount to a mobile payment service, then composed a message to Harold, the groundskeeper. Emergency. Need help tonight at Gala. Palmer Beach Hotel. $2,000 for your assistance. We'll explain there. Life or death. She added payment information and pressed send, praying the old man would check his messages before tonight. Then she stripped and stepped into the shower, letting the hot water wash over her while her mind raced. Richard expected her to help him neutralize Carrington. But what if she could turn the situation to her advantage? What if Carrington wasn't Richard's accomplice, but another victim? The pieces were falling into place now. Richard's fake paralysis, his pattern of disposing of wives, his financial crimes. If she could get concrete evidence of any one of these, she might stand a chance. By the time she shut off the water, Monica had formed the outline of a plan. Dangerous, desperate, with too many variables, but a plan nonetheless. She dressed carefully in the red gown, applied makeup with steady hands, and fastened the diamond necklace around her throat. The woman who stared back from the mirror looked calm, composed, elegant, revealing nothing of the terror and determination warring within. A soft knock at the door. Richard, handsome in his tuxedo, standing without the wheelchair for the first time in their marriage. You look stunning, he said, his eyes traveling the length of her body with possessive appreciation. Carrington won't stand a chance. Neither will you, Monica thought, but she smiled and took his offered arm. The car is waiting, Richard continued, leading her toward the stairs. The hurricane's outer bands have arrived earlier than expected. We'll need to conclude our business and return before the worst hits. Outside, rain lashed against the hurricane's shutters, wind howling around the corners of the house. Nature's fury building just as the storm between Monica and Richard reached its own crescendo. As they descended the grand staircase, thunder cracked directly overhead and the mansion plunged into darkness. In the momentary blindness, Monica felt Richard's hand tighten on her arm. Power outage, he said, his voice close to her ear. The generator should. Before he could finish, emergency lights flickered on, casting eerie shadows across the foyer. Richard's phone buzzed. He checked the display, his expression darkening. Carrington's moved the meeting, he said. Not at the gala. He wants to meet here. Tonight. Monica's carefully constructed plan shattered. Here? What? The storm. He doesn't want to risk being trapped at the hotel. Richard's eyes met hers in the dim light. He'll be here in an hour. The trap was closing faster than she'd anticipated, the pieces rearranging themselves beyond her control. But as lightning illuminated the windows, Monica realized this change might offer one critical advantage. She knew this house, every corner, every hiding place, better than anyone. Even Richard. When the hurricane traps you with your predator, do you become prey or hunter? The grandfather clock in the foyer struck 8 as headlights swept across the front drive, cutting through sheets of rain. Monica stood at the window, watching the black Mercedes pull to a stop. The hurricane's outer bands had arrived with unexpected fury, transforming the manicured grounds into a chaos of thrashing palms and flying debris. "Remember the plan?" Richard said, adjusting his cufflinks with the casual precision of a man accustomed to control. He stood tall beside her, no wheelchair in sight now that the charade no longer served his purpose. "Get him talking about the documents. Record his confession. Then I'll handle the rest." Monica nodded, feeling the weight of the phone in her clutch. Set to record the moment she activated it. And if he doesn't confess, he will. Richard's confidence was absolute. Men like Carrington always believe they're the smartest person in the room. Use that against him. The doorbell chimed, its elegant tone incongruous against the storm's violence. Richard squeezed Monica's shoulder, a gesture that once might have seemed affectionate but now felt like a warning, before striding to answer it. James Carrington was not what Monica had expected. In her mind, she'd pictured someone like Richard, cold, calculating, sharply handsome in that way of wealthy men who buy rather than earn their refinement. Instead, the man who stepped in the foyer was older, with soft features and tired eyes that scanned the room warily. "Prescott," he said, his voice tight as he handed his rain-soaked coat to Richard. "Quite a night for a meeting. The weather waits for no man, James." Richard's smile didn't reach his eyes. Neither does business. Carrington's gaze shifted to Monica, assessing her with none of the predatory interest Richard had predicted. If anything, he looked concerned. "Mrs. Prescott, I presume." He extended his hand. "James Carrington." "Monica, please." She took his hand, searching his expression for any hint of complicity in Richard's schemes. She found none, only wariness and something that might have been pity. "Let's move to the study," Richard said, placing his hand at the small of Monica's back to guide her. "More comfortable there. Monica has prepared drinks." The study was the only room in the house without windows, its walls lined with bookshelves and dark wood paneling. A fire burned in the massive stone hearth, casting dancing shadows across leather furniture. On the side table, a crystal decanter of bourbon stood alongside 3 glasses. As Monica poured the drinks, she watched Carrington take a seat opposite Richard. 2 wolves circling each other, though one seemed notably less eager for the fight. "I must say, I was surprised by your invitation," Carrington said, accepting the glass Monica offered. "After our last conversation, I assumed our business was concluded. That was before I discovered your insurance policy," Richard replied, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. "The documents you've been holding over my head." Carrington's expression didn't change, but his knuckles whitened around his glass. "I have no idea what you're talking about." "Please, James, we're all adults here." Richard gestured to Monica as she took a seat beside him. "In fact, my wife has a proposition for you regarding those documents." This was her cue. Monica activated the recording on her phone, then set her clutch on the table beside her. "Mr. Carrington, I recently found evidence in my husband's office. Evidence that you've been skimming millions from your joint ventures." Carrington's eyebrows rose slightly, but he remained silent. "I'm prepared to destroy this evidence," Monica continued, feeling Richard's approving gaze on her profile. "In exchange, I need you to admit that the documents you're holding, the ones implicating my husband in money laundering, are falsified, that you created them to frame him." A strange expression crossed Carrington's face. Not guilt or fear, but genuine confusion. "Mrs. Prescott, I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding." He set his untouched drink on the table. "I have no documents implicating your husband in money laundering." "Don't insult our intelligence," Richard cut in, his pleasant facade slipping. "We know about the offshore accounts, the shell companies, the evidence you gathered." "The only evidence I have," Carrington said slowly, his eyes moving from Richard to Monica, "concerns the disappearances of your previous wives." The room seemed to freeze. Monica felt Richard tense beside her, the shift almost imperceptible but undeniably dangerous. "My what?" Richard's voice remained level, but Monica recognized the deadly undertone. Elizabeth, Janine, Alicia, Carrington counted them off on his fingers. And now, it seems, Monica is next on your list. Monica's heart raced as pieces clicked into place. Carrington wasn't Richard's accomplice. He was hunting him. "You've been investigating my husband," she said, the words escaping before she could stop them. Carrington nodded. "For 8 years. Ever since Elizabeth's accident seemed too convenient given the insurance policy Richard had recently taken out on her." Richard's laugh held no humor. "This is absurd. Elizabeth died in a car crash. The police ruled an accident. Did they?" Carrington reached inside his jacket and withdrew a thin envelope. "Or did the lead investigator, whose gambling debts mysteriously disappeared the week after the case closed, simply follow the path of least resistance?" He placed the envelope on the table between them. Inside is evidence linking Richard to 3 accidents, each resulting in the death of a wealthy wife who had recently changed her will in his favor. Thunder shook the house as Richard and Monica stared at the envelope. The recording continued, capturing every damning word. "Why are you telling us this?" Monica asked, her voice remarkably steady despite the earthquake happening within her. "Because I made a mistake," Carrington replied, his eyes not leaving Richard's face. "I thought I could gather enough evidence before he moved against you. I was wrong. When I received his invitation tonight, I knew he was accelerating his timeline." Richard stood abruptly, his calm demeanor evaporating. "That's enough. This conversation is over." "Is it?" Carrington remained seated, seemingly unperturbed by Richard's looming presence. "I've already sent copies of everything to the FBI. They're waiting for my confirmation call in." He checked his watch. 20 minutes. "If I don't make that call, they come here." Richard's hand moved to his jacket pocket, withdrawing a small pistol that he aimed at Carrington's head. "Then I suggest you call them now and explain that you've made a terrible mistake." The tension in the room crystallized into something lethal. Monica slowly reached for a clutch, fingers closing around the handgun Richard had given her. "Unloaded," he'd claimed. She had no way of knowing if that was true. "Richard," she said quietly, "think about what you're doing. I'm protecting us, Monica." His eyes never left Carrington. "This man is trying to destroy everything we've built." "Everything you've built on the graves of your wives," Carrington corrected, remarkably composed for a man with a gun pointed at his head. "Tell me, Mrs. Prescott, has your husband shown you his collection yet? The hidden room with the trophies?" Monica's blood ran cold as Richard's finger tightened on the trigger. "He has," she said. "I found it yesterday." Richard's head snapped toward her, genuine surprise breaking through his control. In that moment of distraction, Monica raised her own gun, pointing at her husband. "Put it down, Richard." His eyes widened, then narrowed as calculation replaced shock. "That gun isn't loaded, darling. I told you that this morning." "Did you?" Monica kept her aim steady. "Like you told me you couldn't walk? Like you told me Alicia died in an accident? I stopped believing you the moment I found those wedding certificates." Outside, the storm reached new heights of fury, wind howling around the house like a living thing demanding entry. Inside, 3 people stood frozen in a triangle of suspicion and deadly intent. "Whatever he's paying you, Carrington, I'll double it," Richard said, his gun still trained on the older man. This was never about money. Carrington slowly stood. "Elizabeth was my niece. This is about justice." A sudden, vicious crack split the air as a tree branch shattered the study's door, sending glass and with splinters flying across the room. In the chaos, Richard lunged for Monica, his gun swinging toward her face. She pulled the trigger. Click. Empty, just as he'd said. Richard's smile spread slowly across his face as he raised his own weapon. "Always so trusting, Monica. That will be on your epitaph." Before he could fire, Carrington tackled him from behind. The gun discharged with a deafening bang, the bullet embedding itself in the ceiling as both men crashed into the bookshelf. Monica didn't hesitate. She ran for the one place in the house that might contain the evidence she needed, the hidden room in Richard's office. When the masks finally fall and survival depends on your next move, do you run or fight? Monica flew down the hallway, the sounds of struggle fading behind her as she reached Richard's office. Rain lashed against the windows with apocalyptic fury, wind rattling the glass in its frames. The power flickered again, plunging the room into darkness for 3 terrifying heartbeats before the emergency lights sputtered back to life. The remote for the hidden room. She'd returned it to the desk drawer last night. Her fingers fumbled in the semi-darkness, yanking open drawers until she found it. She pressed the button. The wall panel slid open. Inside, the collection of photographs and mementos seemed even more grotesque in the dim emergency lighting. Monica grabbed her phone from her clutch and began recording, panning across the display of Richard's previous wives, the evidence of their accidents, the trophies he'd collected. A crash from somewhere in the house spurred her to move faster. She had minutes, maybe seconds, before Richard came looking for her. At the back of the hidden room, partially concealed behind the macabre display, was a small safe, the kind used to store important documents or valuables. Monica had never seen it before, but its presence made perfect sense, the final repository for Richard's most damning secrets. But she had no combination, no key, no way to access whatever evidence it might contain. A noise at the office door made her freeze. Not Richard's confident stride, but the shuffling movement of someone injured. Monica raised the empty gun anyway, pointing it toward the doorway. Harold, the groundskeeper, appeared, his weathered face pale with shock, blood streaming from a cut on his forehead. "Mrs. Prescott," he gasped, clutching the doorframe for support. "You need to run. Now." "Harold!" Monica lowered the gun. "What happened? Are you hurt?" "Mr. Richard." Harold winced, pressing a hand to his side. "He came through the kitchen, shot Mr. Carrington. I tried to stop him, but—" Monica rushed to the old man's side, her nurse's training taking over as she helped him to a chair. "How badly is Carrington hurt?" "Don't know. There was so much blood." Harold's breathing was labored, his skin clammy beneath Monica's fingers as she checked his pulse. "Mr. Richard's looking for you. Said he'd burn the house down with all of us inside if he had to." The storm roared its agreement, wind whipping rain against the windows with enough force to make the glass bow inward. "We need to get out of here," Monica said, helping Harold to his feet. "The garage. We can take one of the cars." "Roads are flooding," Harold shook his head. "And he'll have the garage locked down. But there's another way." He gestured weakly toward the window. "Boathouse. Got my truck parked behind it. Keys are in the ignition." Monica looked out at the storm-tossed grounds, the distance between the house and the boathouse suddenly seeming impossible to cross. "We'll be exposed out there. Better than in here with him." Harold pulled something from his pocket, a small key on a tarnished chain. "Before you go, this opens his safe, the one in the hidden room." Monica stared at the key in disbelief. "How do you?" "Been watching him for years, waiting for a chance to help one of you escape." Harold pressed the key into her palm. "The police never believed me about the others. Maybe with what's in there, they'll believe you." Distant footsteps echoed down the hallway. Heavy, purposeful. Richard, coming to finish what he'd started. "Go," Harold urged, pushing her toward the hidden room. "Get what you need. I'll slow him down." "Harold, no." 30 years I've worked for men like him," the old man said, his spine straightening despite his injury. "Watch them treat people like things. Not this time." Before Monica could protest further, Harold moved to the doorway, positioning himself as a final barrier between her and Richard. Inside the hidden room, Monica's hand shook as she fitted the key into the safe's lock. It turned with surprising ease, the heavy door swinging open to reveal stacks of documents, USB drives, and a leather-bound journal. She grabbed everything, stuffing it into her clutch, the beaded fabric stretching beyond its intended capacity. As she worked, she heard Harold's voice from the office. Calm, respectful, the voice of a servant addressing his master. "Mr. Richard, sir, there's water coming in through the kitchen. Thought you should know." Richard's reply was too low to make out, but the menace in his tone carried clearly. Monica eased, the hidden door partially closed, leaving just enough space to see through while concealing her presence. Through the gap, she watched Richard enter the office, gun still in hand. He'd abandoned all pretense now, his face twisted with a cold rage that transformed his handsome features into something monstrous. "Where is she?" "Harold." "Don't know, sir." The groundskeeper stood his ground, though Monica could see how heavily he leaned on the desk for support. Thought she might be checking the water damage downstairs. Richard's laugh held no humor. "Still loyal after all these years. I would have expected better judgment from you." "My judgment's just fine, sir." "Is it?" Richard moved closer, the gun now pointed casually at Harold's chest. "Then you understand what happens next." "Edo." Harold's voice remained steady. "Been expecting it since Miss Elizabeth died." A flash of surprise crossed Richard's face. "You knew, suspected, then watched you do it again, and again." Harold's weathered face showed no fear, only a deep weariness. "Some men are born evil, Mr. Richard. Rest of us just get caught in their current." Richard's finger tightened on the trigger. "Where's my wife, Harold?" Last chance, from her hiding place. Monica could see Harold's eyes flick toward the hidden room, a deliberate tell, drawing Richard's attention away from the window. "She found your collection," Harold said. "Took pictures, then headed for the garage." Richard hesitated, clearly weighing the groundskeeper's words against his own instincts. Outside, the storm reached a new crescendo, a particularly violent gust rattling the windows like someone demanding entry. "If you're lying," Richard began. "What more can you take from me?" Harold asked quietly. "Already dying of cancer. 3 months, doctors say. Figured I'd try to balance my ledger before meeting my maker." Something in the old man's dignity seemed to annoy Richard more than defiance would have. Without another word, he brought the gun down hard against Harold's temple. The groundskeeper crumpled to the floor, unconscious but breathing. Richard turned toward the door, then paused. His gaze swept the room, lingering for a moment on the bookshelf hiding the secret room. A considering look crossed his face, followed by a small, knowing smile. "I see you, Monica," he said softly to the seemingly empty room. "I've always seen you." Then he walked out, his footsteps fading down the hallway toward the garage. Monica exhaled shakily, pushing the hidden door fully open. She rushed to Harold's side, checking his pulse, steady, despite the ugly gash on his temple. She couldn't move him, couldn't help him further without putting them both at risk. "I'm sorry," she whispered, placing his worn cap beneath his head as a pillow. Then she turned to the window. The boathouse stood 300 yards away across the storm-lashed grounds, her only chance at escape. Rain hammered against the glass like bullets as Monica steeled herself for what came next. She'd spent 10 years caring for a monster. Now she would destroy him, or die trying. Would you risk death in a hurricane to escape the devil you know, or gamble everything on outsmarting him in his own domain? Wind and rain hit Monica like physical blows the moment she climbed through the office window. The manicured lawn had transformed into a treacherous marsh, floodwater already ankle-deep and rising. Palm fronds and broken branches flew through the air like missiles, forcing her to duck and weave as she struggled toward the boathouse. Her red gown, designed to entice Carrington, now clung to her body like a second skin, hampering her movements. The wind tore at her hair, whipping it across her face as she bent forward against the gale. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the grounds in stark white flashes that left her night blind in their wake. Halfway to the boathouse, a terrible realization struck her. Richard wouldn't believe Harold's misdirection for long. Once he checked the garage and found it empty, he'd know exactly where she was headed. As if summoned by the thought, light blazed from the house, flashlight beams cutting through the darkness, searching the grounds. Monica dropped to her knees in the flooded grass, making herself as small a target as possible. The clutch with its precious evidence she held above the water, protecting it with her body. The beam swept past her, then returned, more focused now. Richard had spotted something. Monica abandoned stealth for speed, lurching to her feet and running toward the boathouse, no longer caring about noise or visibility. The water had risen to mid-calf, each step requiring immense effort as the sodden ground tried to swallow her feet. A gunshot cracked, the sound almost lost in the storm's fury. Something hot stung Monica's upper arm, a bullet passing close enough to graze skin. She didn't slow down, didn't look back. The boathouse loomed ahead, its weathered structure creaking in the wind. Inside, the relative quiet was shocking after the storm's constant roar. Rain drummed on the metal roof, but the walls blocked the worst of the wind. Monica paused, gasping for breath, her eyes adjusting to the dimness. The boathouse was little more than a glorified shed, a place to store kayaks and paddleboards during Florida's gentler seasons. A single window overlooked the lagoon, where Richard's prized speedboat strained against its moorings, rising and falling on increasingly violent swells. Through the rear door, just as Harold had promised, she could see the outline of his old pickup truck, partially hidden by overgrown bushes. Freedom, if she could reach it. A splash from outside froze her in place. Richard, wading through the floodwater, approaching the boathouse. The beam of his flashlight swept across the windows. Nowhere to hide, nowhere to run. Monica looked around desperately, searching for a weapon, an escape route, anything. Her gaze fell on the speedboat, then on the fuel cans stacked neatly against the wall. Emergency supplies for hurricane season. A plan formed in her mind. Dangerous, possibly suicidal, but the only option left. She grabbed one of the fuel cans and quickly unscrewed the cap, the sharp smell of gasoline filling the small space. With trembling hands, she splashed the liquid across the wooden floor, the walls, creating a trail that led to the rear door, her escape route to Harold's truck. The front door of the boathouse crashed open. Richard stood silhouetted against the storm, his hair plastered to his head, his tuxedo ruined by rain and mud. The gun in his hand looked impossibly black against the night sky behind him. Enough games, Monica. His voice carried even over the storm's fury. It's over. Monica stood beside the fuel cans, clutch still gripped tightly in one hand, the empty gas container in the other. You're right. It is over. Richard stepped inside, closing the door behind him. Water dripped from his clothes, forming puddles on the fuel-soaked floor. If he smelled the gasoline, he gave no sign. I underestimated you, he said, his tone almost conversational. I didn't think you had this kind of fight in you. You never really knew me. Monica edged toward the rear door, keeping her movements subtle. You saw what you wanted to see, what you needed me to be. Richard laughed, a genuine sound that was somehow more terrifying than his anger. That's where you're wrong. I knew exactly who you were from the moment I saw you with my mother. Compassionate, dedicated, subservient. He spat the last word like an insult. The perfect caretaker, the perfect victim. And now, Monica asked, continuing her slow retreat. Now you're a liability. Richard raised the gun, aiming at her chest. But I'll make it quick. You've earned that much. Before you kill me, Monica said, fighting to keep her voice steady, I want to know, what happened to the others? Elizabeth? Janine? Did they figure out too? Something flickered across Richard's face, a moment of genuine emotion breaking through the calculating mask. Elizabeth got greedy, wanted a divorce, a settlement. Janine found the records, started asking questions. His expression hardened. Both problems required solutions. And Alicia was smarter than you. She ran before I could finish the job. Richard's smile returned, cold and empty. But eventually, everyone makes a mistake. Even you, coming here instead of taking the main road. I didn't make a mistake, Monica said quietly. I made a choice. She dropped the empty gas can and pulled a cigarette lighter from her clutch. one of Richard's, taken from his desk drawer days ago when she first began gathering potential weapons. Understanding dawned in Richard's eyes a second too late. "Monica, don't." The lighter's flame caught the gasoline fumes instantly. Fire exploded across the boathouse floor, racing along the trail Monica had created. In seconds, the entire front half of the structure was engulfed, a wall of flame separating her from Richard. Through the fire, she saw him stagger backward, his arm raised against the sudden heat. The gun fired wildly, bullets splintering with somewhere above her head. Monica turned and ran for the rear door, for Harold's truck, for freedom. Behind her, Richard's shouts turned to screams as the flames reached the remaining fuel cans. The explosion lifted Monica off her feet, hurling her through the doorway and into the floodwater outside. Heat seared her back. Debris rained down around her as she struggled to her knees, gasping for breath in air suddenly thick with smoke and ash. Dazed, ears ringing, she looked back. The boathouse had become an inferno, flames leaping skyward despite the pouring rain. No sign of Richard, no movement within the blaze. Harold's truck stood 20 feet away, partially illuminated by the fire's glow. Monica staggered toward it, every muscle screaming in protest, clutch still somehow gripped in her hand. The evidence, the key to ensuring Richard could never hurt anyone again, even if he'd somehow survived. As she reached for the truck's door handle, a hand closed around her ankle, yanking her backward into the mud. Richard, face blackened with soot, clothes smoldering, one side of his perfect features blistered and raw, loomed over her, his eyes reflecting the boathouse flames like windows in a hell itself. "You burned it all down," he snarled, fingers digging in her flesh with inhuman strength. "Everything I built." Monica kicked frantically, trying to break his grip. "Let me go, so you could tell the world? Destroy my name." Richard dragged her closer, his free hand reaching for her throat. "I made you, Monica, and I can unmake you." As his fingers closed around her neck, Monica remembered something, the unloaded gun, still in her clutch alongside the evidence. Useless as a weapon, but perhaps she swung the heavy, beaded bag with all her remaining strength, connecting solidly with Richard's burned temple. He howled in pain, his grip loosening just enough for her to scramble away, to lunge for the truck door. The key was in the ignition, just as Harold had promised. Monica turned it, the engine roaring to life above the storm's wail. She threw the truck into reverse, just as Richard lunged for the door. His fingers caught the edge of the window as the truck began to move. For one terrible moment, Monica thought he would make it inside. Then his grip slipped on the rain-slick glass, and he fell away, disappearing beneath the rising floodwaters. Monica didn't look back. She couldn't. The truck lurched down the service road, headlights cutting through sheets of rain as she fled the burning ruins of the life Richard had built for them both. Behind her, the mansion stood dark and silent, its secrets laid bare by flame and fury. Ahead lay uncertainty, danger, but also possibility, a future written by her own hand rather than scripted by a monster. As she reached the main road, Monica allowed herself one shuddering breath, then another, then a third. For the first time in 10 years, she was free. But freedom, she was beginning to realize, came with its own kind of terror. If you had to burn down everything you'd known for a decade to free yourself, would the ashes feel like loss or liberation? 3 days after the hurricane, Monica sat in a sterile interview room at the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office, her hands wrapped around a paper cup of cooling coffee. Outside, the Florida sun had returned with innocent brilliance, as if to deny the destruction left in the storm's wake. Through the window, she could see cleanup crews clearing debris from the parking lot, a small fraction of the recovery efforts happening across the county. Detective Lauren Reyes sat across from her, dark circles under her eyes testifying to the endless hours worked since the hurricane hit. On the table between them lay the evidence from Richard's safe, documents, photographs, the journal that detailed his crimes with cold precision. "Let me make sure I understand," Reyes said, flipping through her notes. "You're saying your husband, Richard Prescott, respected businessman, philanthropist, and pillar of the Palm Beach community. Murdered at least 2 of his previous wives, attempted to kill a third, and was planning to kill you next. Yes, Monica's voice remained steady, though exhaustion pulled at every word. The evidence is all there. The journal details everything. How he staged Elizabeth's car accident, how he drugged Janine before pushing her overboard during a yacht trip. And Alicia Kennedy, the third wife, she escaped, faked her own death. I don't know where she is now. Reyes studied Monica's face. And James Carrington? You're saying he came to warn you. He was investigating Richard. Elizabeth was his niece. Monica took a sip of bitter coffee. Is he alive? The detective hesitated. Barely. Gunshot wound to the chest, significant blood loss. He's in intensive care. Relief washed through Monica. At least Richard hadn't managed to add another name to his list of victims. What about Harold Williams, the groundskeeper? Concussion, minor lacerations. He's already been released from the hospital. Reyes set down her pen. His statement matches yours for what it's worth. Says he's been suspicious of Mr. Prescott for years. And Richard? Monica asked the question she'd been avoiding since rescue workers had found her half-drowned in Harold's truck, the floodwaters having swept the vehicle off the road 2 miles from the estate. Reyes's expression revealed nothing. No body has been recovered yet. The storm surge was significant. If he drowned, he could have been carried out to sea, or he could be alive. Monica's hands tightened around the coffee cup. Looking for me, Mrs. Prescott. Monica, please. Monica. Reyes leaned forward. I need you to understand something. These allegations are extraordinary. Without a body, without direct physical evidence linking your husband to these deaths beyond these documents, which a good lawyer will argue could have been fabricated, this case is far from solid. The familiar weight of helplessness settled on Monica's shoulders. Of course, Richard's influence reached beyond death or disappearance. His money, his connections, his carefully cultivated reputation as a philanthropist and community leader would protect him even now. So you don't believe me? It wasn't a question. What I believe isn't relevant. Reyes's tone softened slightly. What matters is what I can prove in court. Monica set down her coffee cup and reached for her purse, a plain black bag that had replaced the beaded clutch lost in the flood. From it, she withdrew her phone, miraculously still functional despite everything it had endured. The night of the hurricane, I recorded my conversation with Richard and Carrington. She placed the phone on the table. Everything is there. Richard pulling a gun, Carrington revealing his investigation, Richard's reaction. And after that, I recorded the hidden room, the trophies he kept from his previous wives. Reyes stared at the phone as if it might explode. You have audio of her husband threatening Carrington? Audio and video of the entire night. Monica slid the phone toward the detective. I started recording the moment Carrington arrived and didn't stop until my battery died, somewhere during my escape from the boathouse. The detective picked up the phone carefully as if handling evidence from a crime scene, which Monica supposed it was. This changes things, Reyes said quietly. Significantly. For the next hour, they sat together watching the recordings. Monica relived it all. Richard's threats, Carrington's revelations, the hidden room with its grotesque collection, the final confrontation in the boathouse. When the video ended abruptly with flames filling the screen, Reyes sat back, her professional detachment visibly shaken. I've been a detective for 15 years, she said finally. I've never seen anything like this. Now do you believe me? Reyes nodded slowly. Dull. And more importantly, this is evidence a prosecutor can use. She stood, gathering her notes. I need to make some calls. This investigation just became a top priority. Left alone in the interview room, Monica closed her eyes, allowing herself to acknowledge the bone-deep exhaustion that had been her constant companion since the hurricane. 3 days of hospitals, police interviews, emergency shelters, all while jumping at shadows, expecting Richard to appear at any moment to finish what he'd started. The door opened, and Reyes returned, accompanied by a woman in a dark suit. Monica, this is Special Agent Keller with the FBI. She'd like to ask you some questions about Richard's business dealings. The next hours passed in a blur of technical questions about offshore accounts, property transfers, and money laundering operations that Monica had glimpsed in Richard's files. She answered as best she could, turning over USB drives and documents recovered from the safe. "Mrs. Prescott," Agent Keller said as the interview wound down, "we've been investigating your husband's financial activities for over a year. What you've provided today connects several critical dots in our case. Will it be enough?" Monica asked. "To prosecute him if he's found alive? Between your evidence and what Carrington collected?" "Absolutely." Keller's confidence was reassuring. "Richard Prescott won't escape justice, whether we find him or not." As twilight fell, Detective Reyes drove Monica to the hotel where she'd been staying since the hurricane. A modest place far from the luxury she'd grown accustomed to, but safe, anonymous. "We'll have an officer outside your door tonight," Reyes said as they pulled into the parking lot. "Just as a precaution, you think he might have survived?" The detective chose her words carefully. "I think a man who's gone to such lengths to hide his crimes wouldn't be easy to kill, even by a hurricane." Monica nodded, too tired to feel fresh fear. "What happens now?" "Now you try to rest. Tomorrow, we'll arrange protective custody until we know for certain whether your husband is dead or alive." Reyes hesitated, "And you might want to consider what comes after a new identity, a new location. A fresh start. A fresh start." The words sounded hollow after a decade of living someone else's version of her life. Who was Monica without Richard's influence? Without his control? She barely remembered the nurse from Birmingham who had once believed in fairy tales. In her hotel room, Monica stood before the bathroom mirror, studying her reflection. The woman who stared back had changed. Harder eyes, a tightness around the mouth that hadn't been there before. Hurricane survivor. Widow perhaps. Victim no longer. She reached up and removed the diamond earrings she'd been wearing since the night of the storm. Richard's gifts, symbols of his ownership. They sparkled under the harsh bathroom light, beautiful and cold. Monica placed them carefully on the counter. Then she turned on the shower, let steam fill the small bathroom, and stepped under the hot water, washing away the last physical traces of Richard Prescott from her skin. As the water sluiced over her body, Monica finally allowed herself to cry, not from fear or grief, but from a profound relief that bordered on disbelief. The nightmare was ending. Justice was coming. She had survived, but as she turned off the water and reached for a towel, a notification chimed on her phone, left charging on the bathroom counter. A text message from an unknown number. "Did you really think it would be that easy to kill me? See you soon, darling." When freedom seems finally within your grasp, what terrifies you more? The monster you thought you destroyed, or facing life without the chains you've grown accustomed to? 6 months passed. Seasons changed. Palm Beach rebuilt after the hurricane, its wealthy residents restoring their mansions and resuming their lives of privilege, as if the destruction had been merely an inconvenient interruption. Monica Williams, no longer Monica Prescott, sat at a small cafe table in downtown Atlanta, watching people hurry past on their way to offices, appointments, ordinary lives. Her own life had become anything but ordinary. The FBI had relocated her through their witness protection program, providing a new identity, a modest apartment, and assistance finding employment. She now worked at a community health clinic, her nursing license reinstated, her skills once again serving those who needed them most. Richard's body had never been found. The official ruling listed him as presumed dead, swept out to sea by the hurricane's storm surge. His estate remained in legal limbo, frozen by federal investigations into money laundering, tax evasion, and 3 counts of homicide. The text message that night at the hotel had been traced to a burner phone purchased by one of Richard's associates, a final act of intimidation that investigators believed had been prearranged in case anything happened to him. A contingency plan, like everything else in Richard's meticulously organized life. Still, Monica checked over her shoulder whenever she entered her apartment. Still kept a baseball bat beside her bed. Still startled at shadows. Her phone buzzed with an incoming call. Detective Reyes, who had remained in contact despite the case technically being out of her jurisdiction now. "Any news?" Monica asked after greetings were exchanged. "Nothing definitive." Reyes's voice crackled over the connection. "But I thought you should know. Carrington's awake. Doctors think he'll make a full recovery." Relief washed through Monica. "That's wonderful. There's more. The offshore accounts we found in Richard's records, they're being emptied. Someone with his passwords is moving the money." Monica's hand tightened around the phone. "You think it's him?" "I think we can't rule it out." Reyes paused. "Are you somewhere safe? People around?" "I'm at a cafe. Very public." Monica glanced around at the busy tables surrounding her. "Do I need to move again?" "Not yet, but stay vigilant." The detective's concern was evident even through the phone. "The FBI is monitoring all ports of entry, international financial transfers. If he's alive, we'll find him." After the call ended, Monica sat motionless, her coffee cooling untouched before her. The possibility that had haunted her nightmares for 6 months suddenly felt more substantial, more immediate. Richard might be alive, might be watching her right now. She paid her bill and left, walking briskly toward the clinic where her afternoon shift would begin in 30 minutes. The familiar route took her past shops, offices, a small park where children played under their parents' watchful eyes. Normal life, the kind she was slowly learning to build for herself, piece by fragile piece. At the clinic entrance, Monica paused. A flower delivery courier stood by the reception desk, a bouquet of red roses in his hands. "Monica Williams?" he called, reading from a card. Her blood turned to ice. No one sent her flowers. No one in Atlanta even knew her well enough to do so. "I'm Monica," she said, her voice barely audible. The courier handed her the bouquet. "Special delivery. Guy said you'd know who they're from." With trembling fingers, Monica opened the small envelope attached to the flowers. Inside was a plain white card bearing a message in familiar handwriting. "For better or for worse, remember? This isn't over." Or, she dropped the roses as if they burned her. Red petals scattered across the clinic's linoleum floor like drops of blood. Outside, rain began to fall. A gentle spring shower, nothing like the hurricane that had supposedly claimed Richard's life. Monica watched the drops trace patterns on the clinic windows, her reflection ghostly pale against the darkening sky. For a moment, paralyzing fear threatened to overwhelm her. Then, slowly, something else rose to take its place. A cold, clear anger that burned away the terror. Richard thought she was still the woman he had controlled for 10 years. The nurturing nurse who had submitted to his every demand. The perfect wife who had looked away from his crimes. He was wrong. Monica took out her phone and dialed Reyes again. "He found me," she said when the detective answered. "And now I'm going to find him." The hunted would become the hunter. The victim would become the reckoning. And this time, when she burned Richard's world to the ground, she would make sure nothing remained but ashes. When someone tries to reclaim ownership of your life, do you run and hide or stand and fight?